Hi, this is Joe again with another review. And for us, in this video, we're going to be discussing the 2001 Oscar-winning film. I should say, the Oscar-winning film for the year 2001, which is A Beautiful Mind. Starring Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, Christopher Plummer, and Paul Bettany. Of course, Paul Bettany was in the Da Vinci Code, played the monk in the Da Vinci Code film. Well, this movie is probably based on a true story on math professor and Nobel laureate in economics, John Nash, played by Russell Crowe, and his battle against schizophrenia. He was like a paranoid schizophrenic. And of course, this movie has, of course, problems with the inaccuracies. Of course, I'm telling you, movies should get as accurate as possible and not, change the facts to make it like a better story. Especially if you're doing a story on a real life person, or if you're doing about a battle in let's say World War II or the Civil War, whatever. You have to get as accurate as possible, and that dramatically change the facts, so you can make a better story or at least a tighter plot. And that's what they did in some instances in this film. But as the film itself, it did win the Academy Award for Best Picture despite the inaccuracies with the facts. And of course, Russell Crowe, who played John Nash, gave a great performance. But the problem is that Russell Crowe is such a pain in the ass in Hollywood, and the way he treats people, the way he treats the cold stores and stuff like that, that he was passed over for the Academy Award for Best Actor. Because he just won an Academy Award the year before for Gladiator, and after that year, after he won for that role, he was typecast as being a pain in the ass, and to the point that Oscar voters did not vote for him a second time. It was great and rewarding for Gladiator the year before, but we're not going to do it again. We give him another Oscar because he's a pain in the ass. Like I said, I know I went to a long thing here with the debut of this film, but for the film itself, John Nash starts off as a graduate student in Princeton, and he gets a job at his lab. Originally, John Nash worked for MIT after he got out of graduate school. But they made up a fictional lab just for the movie. And while he was working there, he gets another job at the Pentagon, which wasn't true. In real life, he didn't work for the Pentagon. Well, he wasn't offered a job at the Pentagon, but he did that for the film to show that John Nash was a schizophrenic. And of course, big shock, the people who he encountered, particularly his former college roommate, and the guy who his contact with the CIA guy, the Central Intelligence Agency guy, who contacted John Nash to help him decode some stuff that the Russians were pushing in magazines and newspapers to see if they could decode it. Those two characters, plus the niece of John Nash's former college roommate, were all in his mind, imaginary, and not real people. It was from his delusion. Now, the problem that I have with this movie is, I know it was a 2001 film, but I just watched it recently, just over the weekend, and I'm wondering how in the world did they determine that he had schizophrenia? That was the problem that I had. Because there was a sequence where John Nash was, after he decoded some stuff for the CIA, he was told to go to Pacific Drop and drop it off in this mailbox for the CIA. And while I was constantly doing that, there was one particular time when there was a shootout. As soon as he dropped off the latest decoded information that John Nash had, he dropped it off where he was supposed to drop it off, and they had to shoot. The CIA had a shootout with the Russians. They said, "Oh, the drop has been compromised," and all that type of thing. And the next day, after they had the shootout, John Nash was captured by a psychiatrist and was taken to a mental hospital. And like, I mean, how they determined that this guy was from a mental, and that psychiatrist was played by Christopher Plummer, who also gave a great performance. I believe he was nominated for this role as well. Christopher Plummer was, and they determined that he was, schizophrenic. And the whole time John Nash thought this telescope was run by the Russians to get information out of him, and he wouldn't break. But the truth of the matter was, I don't know how in the world that they found out that, or the psychiatrist was involved. I don't know how they got or determined that he was schizophrenic. I don't know how they determined to capture him and to put him in a mental hospital. That stuff was kind of murky to me. I couldn't quite get it why they would arrest him in the first place. Nobody, I went to that point in the film, you didn't know that John Nash was schizophrenic. He just thought that he was just doing this job and, giving information to the CIA and stuff. You just thought that. And all of a sudden they turned on the switch and made this big twist that he was actually schizophrenic, and he made the whole thing up with the CIA, with being hired as a civilian spy against the Russians, because this is probably the time of the Cold War in the 1950s. And so, I mean, I don't know how in the world they determined that John Nash was imagining all that stuff. Now, that's the problem. That's the problem that I had with the film. But the rest of the film determined that how his treatment was going. They had to have like incident shock therapy. I never even heard of that. I heard of electric shock therapy. But because it was determined, that was helped Carrie Fisher out when she had her problems. When she was alive, she was until the time of her death, she's still getting electric shock. Actress Carrie Fisher. So I knew about that from her life story. But for John Nash, I never heard of anybody getting an incident shock therapy. Naturally, I don't know anything about psychiatry, because thankfully they have to go through any of that crap, because I think it's all bullshit anyway. But with John Nash, how in the hell did they determine that this guy had all these mental problems? They didn't. They didn't even explain to you how they figured out that that he had this problem. He imagined the whole thing with the CIA and stuff. I mean, that part they didn't explain that part in the story, and I wish they had. Because sometimes I'm a stickler for movies, and I'm a stickler for how they found out, especially if it's a true story like the story of John Nash, how they figured out that he was nuts, to put it bluntly. They didn't explain that in the film, and I wish they had. I would like the film more if they explained in a little detail. But that's my only major nitpick of this film. But everybody gave it a terrific performance, and I think just about everybody involved should have won an Oscar for acting. I know Jennifer Connelly did. She won for Best Supporting Actress for playing John Nash's wife. And she is so beautiful to look at. I mean, she was like absolutely stunning to look at in this film. I mean, she really was. Of course, Christopher Plummer gave a good performance as a psychiatrist. But like I said earlier, Russell Crowe should have won the Oscar for Best Actor for this film, and be the first actor since Tom Hanks to win back-to-back Oscars. I don't think anybody has ever won back-to-back Oscars since Tom Hanks. When Tom Hanks won for Philadelphia and Forrest Gump, sorry about that. That was my phone. It got picked up. That should have been Russell Crowe should have been the next one to win back-to-back Oscars. But like I said earlier, he was such a pain in the butt. He didn't. Oscar Rose didn't vote for him, considering the fact that he won the Oscar the year before. They didn't want to do it. Have him win again for the second year in a row. But there's neither here or there. But at least Ron Howard finally won an Oscar for Best Director for this movie. And it was the first movie, not only did Ron Howard win for Best Director, but one of his movies went for Best Picture. And that's what A Beautiful Mind did. Won, I think, 4 Oscars altogether for the screenplay, for the director, the movie itself, and for Jennifer Connelly. And that was it. But at least this movie won one of the few in recent years, at least in the 21st century, that has won the Oscar for Best Picture, and somebody who acted in it won an Oscar for the acting. Which is like one of my pet peeves. I mean, how can you have a movie to win an Oscar for Best Picture and not have any actors winning? Because there's been a bunch of movies that has done that over the years. A bunch of them. From Casablanca to Rocky to Titanic even. The Lord of the Rings movies. Lord of the Rings Return of the King, they won 11 Oscars. No, one of them was for acting, and same thing for Titanic. Ben-Hur was the other movie that won 11 Oscars. That one at least won for 2 Oscars for acting. For Charlton Heston and the guy who won for supporting actor. But I forgot his name, so that's why I didn't say it. But for Beautiful Mind, I think it was a good movie. Not the greatest, even though it is an Oscar-winning film, but it's definitely not one of the better Oscar-winning films because of all the inaccuracies. And if I discuss all the inaccuracies here in this video, we'd be here all day. But I already mentioned one with the CIA thing, and there's one inaccuracy on that, and also the inaccuracy of him working at this made-up company instead of MIT. Or a lab associated with MIT. That's where he actually worked at, not the lab that was mentioned in the film. So there's a few inaccuracies, a few like liberties, and how they mix, which is kind of like what Oliver Stone did with JFK. I mean, he took so much dramatic license for that film, but it doesn't excuse for. I mean, I feel if you're doing tell a true story, tell it right, make it as accurate as you can. Do not leave anything out that people like me, like myself, or other YouTube critics will nitpick on. Because if you're inaccurate about one thing, how can we possibly like the movie or praise the movie if you get facts wrong? I mean, it's one thing to criticize Titanic because he made fictional characters within a non-fiction or real-life story. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, that's the main thing to complain about. That they have fiction, like Jack and Rose were fictional characters in Titanic. But at least you knew that before you went in. At least I did. But when I first saw Titanic. But if you're really doing a portrayal of a real life person, you gotta get every fact right. Double and triple check all the facts. Then you can make it accurate. But the problem is the people will get bored by it. That's why they frenetic some of the facts in these movies sometimes. That's why Hollywood sucks sometimes. That's because they take dramatic licenses to make it the best, the story tighter, a tighter script, or make the story maybe even more dramatic. So that's my problem with Beautiful Mind. But I wouldn't recommend it just for the sake of watching an Oscar-winning film. I mean, if you're like a real movie buff and want to watch Oscar-winning films, you have to watch this one. So that's my review of A Beautiful Mind. Please click on the video, please rate it, feel free to comment on it. Please subscribe to my channel, please forward this video onto your Facebook pages. You can watch all my videos on my YouTube channel at rowdyc.com, that's all WDY, and that's c.com. There's a homepage of the Rowdy Reviewer, Chris Lee Moore, and please check out all of his videos on his website as well. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.